my underhat.
Yeah, it's the eyes that always give us trouble.
I'm planning to build a reindeer rig with the Insta360 in the center and two of the Amaranths there and two more on the side.
Nice.
The problem I get is, of course, I will have 4 light speckles in my eyes, so I'm trying to make sure that maybe just one of them is the brightest.
Lighting is a constant. It's like cooking. You got to have the right spice.
This is going in the small suitcases that we are going to send out in kits.
At least we have small, bright sources that you can then modify with other things that are travelable now. Boy, when we had to do this with HMIs, the cables weighed more than the whole rig.
Yeah, the Amaranths are kind of cool. You use them as effect lights and.
Anyone have any strong feelings about B&W and Marantz and the rest going to Samsung?
Everything's being consolidated into one large audio conglomerate.
Marantz has been re-owned, like 7 times? Marantz,
they're
once
not
upon
the
a
same
time.
company. I mean, back in the heyday, in the
Yeah.
70s, they made some really high-end AV receivers. There are some very coveted high-end models from the 70s that I still see selling for $2,000 to $3,000 each. If you look at some of I forget the model numbers, but they made this beast of an amplifier that just was so chock full of features, and it would support moving magnet, moving coil cartridges, and it had a built-in tuner, and it was like their flagship one, like big heavy capacitors, toroidal transformer. And that thing weighed like 60 pounds. It was just a beast. It sounds awesome, but not the same like their new stuff.
Marantz 2270, I think, was my first
Soundcraft
apartment.
They're not really much of a player. We still sell their products, but they're not fantastic like they used to be.
I still have a pipe dream. If you want to know if I ever hit the lottery, if you ever see me with a pair of those 800 diamonds, 804 or 802s, I think. Oh.
What about those Macintosh amplifiers? Huh?
With the big green meters.
Macintosh is cool.
Yeah.
I just love the look. It's like I like that they sound good, but it makes a statement when somebody walks in.
It does, yeah. Actually, you know who
Power
makes really
hungry
nice?
Beast, so
It's a one.
You know who makes
cable
really nice
speaker.
tube? CJ, have you heard of Prima Luna? You heard of that brand? Oh, you should go to upscaleaudio.com. The guy that owns that store in Los Angeles, Prima Luna, is his tube amp company. And they make they're more affordable options. They start at about $2,000 or $2,500, so they're not insane, but they sound just phenomenal. And they look beautiful. They are like just gorgeous designs. Everything, copy that. Everything is point-to-point wiring as well. There are no chips or anything like that. It is just like old school design.
And now I've got
audio. Look up Moth Audio.
Moth Audio. Now I've got Louis Prima stuck in my head.
Yeah, look at the
designs
here.
Moth Audio. Buonasera, signorina. Buonasera. It's time to say goodnight to Napoli. But yeah, Prima Luna. I'll check that out. Thanks, Alexander. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and production questions 7 days a week. We've got an awesome audio panel assembled. So, Alexander, let's dive right in.
First question this morning is coming from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. Does the panel recommend using Blackmagic Micro Panel with 2ME 4K for productions, or does the Bluetooth functionality render it a no-go?
Mickey?
Yeah, I think Bluetooth, the Bluetooth functionality, I think wouldn't be an issue because you would ideally be hardwiring it to a computer via USB. I think the weak point here would be Atem software control because this panel essentially controls Atem software control, which would then control the switcher itself. Atem software control has had the memory leak issue that it's had for over a decade now, which still has not been fixed. But if you just keep in mind to quit and relaunch Atem software control every single day, you should be fine because it takes a couple of days before Atem software control crashes because of the memory leak. I know some people that in an environment where all their systems are kept running all day, they have a script that quits and relaunches Atem software control on downtime hours. So you can implement that if your infrastructure isn't being used for global productions or global broadcasts that might be operating at the wee hours of the morning for you in New York. But I wouldn't consider Bluetooth a showstopper because you'd be hardwiring anyway. But if you're in the market for a controller, I would highly recommend saving up and investing in controllers from the likes of Scarhoy that create certainly more robust and better feeling controllers. They have a whole slew of controllers available that not only control Atem switchers, but you can control like specific buttons to trigger other software or other hardware aside from the Atem itself.
Next question.
Jeff Francis in Columbia, South Carolina. A presenter, Talking Head and Slides, in Zoom webinar discussed screen sharing versus external switching, Atem Mini, with regard to video quality of slides, ease of use, and viewer experience.
Good, Ronnie.
Well, so first on, if you're sharing using the normal screen sharing or sharing functionality of Zoom, you will get a special type of video feed, which is a little bit higher resolution, and it's giving you more details. The thing we always use and have been doing for years now is to do all the image switching outside of Zoom and just have one camera feed like we do here in office hours. We just use one camera feed, and if we need to add something to that from other displays as well, we just use an external switcher like the Atem Mini, for instance, or similar. You can also use, of course, Constellation switchers and Roland and whatever. The thing that I tend to think of is that the extra resolution for sharing displays do not weigh up for the problems and the things that happens when you do it. It's cleaner. You just pin for everyone or spotlight for everyone, the main feed coming from the person talking, and then easily switch other content in and out as you go by. And you can even have a butterfly or picture-in-picture effect and still use that in the same way and get the thing over to your single channel of video. The other thing I'm thinking of, if you have a presentation with so much details that you actually need a high resolution, you should really be rethinking what you have on your slides.
Jeff?
Thanks, Ronnie. That kind of confirms what I was thinking, and that's how I do it here. I have an Atem Mini, and if I'm going to show something, I can just flip over to that. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not going to lose too much. I do think it also allows a second operator to run the Atem Mini and let the presenter work on actually presenting. I find it really awkward when there's that pause. Hold on a moment while I screen share, and they have to click around and find that. So I just, David Brady put in the chat that static images will get a different video quality But I think Ronnie really pointed out something, which is if you have that much detail in the presentation, your slides are probably too tiny of text or images. You can't share that kind of in a large presentation.
Mickey?
Yeah, certainly. Bear in mind that maybe some people might be joining the webinar through their phone or through a small screen device. So you'd want to have your slides have text large enough and detail large enough to be read even on those smaller screens. There's also the variable with regards to what resolution the account is capable of within Zoom. Is it only 720 capable? Is it approved for 1080? Those are variables that might also matter in terms of what you're doing. And also bear in mind with a Zoom webinar, the view that the attendees of the webinar see is selectable between what the view of the host is, what the view of the host is, or locked to gallery view or locked to active speaker view. And if there is a screen share enabled in the webinar, the host is capable of selecting between either picture-in-picture or side-by-side. So these are things that you have to bear in mind in terms of managing what the attendees of the webinar see. It's always best, like back when I worked on a bunch of webinars, including office hours in the past, I would always have a computer that is in the webinar as an attendee so that I can verify what I'm pushing out to the attendees.
Ronnie?
Yeah, just to add to what Mickey said, especially when you're using an account which does not have 1080, it's kind of on the tipping point where you should maybe think of using the share functionality. But what I would also say that external is not only physical hardware. You can use applications like vMix, Mimo Live, etc. to do the virtual cam production. So you can do stuff inside those softwares and then return the result of what you're doing in that software back to Zoom as a virtual camera. So that is also an option to make really, really engaging content.
Next question.
This one's from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. Through various hardware purchases, I have about 5 PreSonus Studio One Prime licenses. I thought that was pretty cool until I tried to use some of the plugins I had accumulated/bought, only to find out I need to upgrade to the artist version. Thoughts?
Jeff?
Peter, you've just discovered why they give you a free license. Yeah, we don't say free, we say included. That's something I taught my kids when they were going to college. They're like, oh, I can go to the gym for free. I was like, no, it's actually just included. So in the cost of your hardware, included with that is a license that will, tease you, get you hooked on the software, hopefully, and have you upgrade to the next version and the next version.
Marty?
Yeah, exactly that. It's a free teaser. It's 2-channel only, so it's very limited in its feature set.
And what are we looking at, Marty?
We're looking at $200 for the full version of PreSonus Studio One Pro. Interestingly enough, they're actually running a promo right now. If you purchase any hardware over $200, you get the Pro version included.
Cool. All right. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what Jeff said.
Next question.
At EcoGendorfer in Viera, Florida, USA, I am refurbishing conference rooms and the client wants to keep the glass walls and windows for daylight. Is there a clear film that can be applied to reduce sound reflection on glass?
Go ahead, Marty.
Not that I'm aware of, not a film. There are a few strategies, however, depending on whether you're using speakers at the front of the room or if you're using down-firing overhead speakers. One of the things that I've seen are frames made that fit over the inside of the windows that have clear plexiglass louvers either horizontally or vertically, that can redirect reflections to different angles, and therefore sort of breaking things up while being transparent. The other thing that you could do is to use a different kind of loudspeaker, particularly and this is very unique, which is why I'm mentioning it, the flat panel audio speakers, where actually reflections are constructive instead of destructive. They can be used either in the front of a room or ceiling-mounted firing down.
Courtney?
Yeah, there's not really a film coating or anything. It depends on if your conference room is landlocked. In other words, it's not on the doesn't have an outside wall with a window in it. If it's all interior, you can do what we do in the motion picture industry is gimbal the windows, which if they're flat plain glass, each of the windows is mounted in a pane that will swivel either left or right or up and down so that you can offset them by a slight angle. And that'll eliminate some of the standing waves you have, especially if you have parallel glass walls. That is death. So if you want to make one wall slightly off angle, 3 or 4 degrees, that'll help ameliorate the standing waves, the sound bouncing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between those glass panels. Another thing to consider is if you just want the daylight and you want some visibility, is glass bricks. You can take a look at these glass brick walls. These bricks are available, from a variety of the Home Depot and Lowe's to build these walls. They allow some visibility through. They let the light through, but the surface of them are textured, which reflects. Look at the different types. That there's this kind of lenticular sign and this wavy kind here, and just make sure that there's not a flat surface on the outside of the brick. Make sure that the texture is on the outside of the brick so that it reflects sound off this uneven surface. And that will help eliminate a lot of the reflections. This one looks really cool, but it's awfully expensive for $40. But that's another idea. It lets the light through. It also gives you some degree of privacy in a conference room. A lot of times, it depends on what you're discussing in the conference. A lot of times they don't want people peeking in to see what they're showing if they're showing new products. Or, that would never go in an Apple conference room. Well, I guess there is under a non-disclosure agreement anyway, but because they want to keep a lot of stuff secret, so you want to be able to pull shades down or conceal what's going on in the conference room, and glass breaks might do enough to keep things distorted enough that you can't really see what's going on.
Go ahead, Mickey.
A clear film, certainly not what for you to be able to control sound waves, you need mass to be able to absorb it and lock it in. The more mass, the lower the frequency you can control. An option, as Marty mentioned earlier, is louvers. That allows you to diffuse the sound or make a custom diffuser to place in front of the windows. Another option is to, ask the client, what is the priority here? If acoustics and intelligibility is not a priority, then they'll live with what they get. But if they value speech intelligibility in this conference room, then they really should do what's best for the usability of the room.
Marty?
Yeah, certainly. If this is a conference room that's going to be used for teleconferencing, acoustics should be a primary factor in terms of functionality. And I just want to mention, for more information on those very unique loudspeakers, refer you to the Office Hours special show, where I went into that technology and explained more about it.
Your votes and your questions drive the show, and voting is especially important today. We've got a ton of questions and an awesome panel, so you can vote up what you want us to talk about. Also use Makana to chat and ask more questions, and you can if you don't have access, just sign up at officehours.global/join so you can get into Makana, into Discord and more. That's officehours.global/join. Next question.
Jeff Francis in Columbia, South Carolina. What is BitFocus Buttons? How does it differ from Companion?
Ronnie?
In many different ways. I would say that Buttons is a more professional product. First and foremost, it's a subscription-based thing. It has professional support, whereas Companion only have community support, and of course it's being used all over the place. One of the biggest features for me that I see Button do is to be very quickly assigning literally hundreds of the same type of button, whereas in a Companion, it's kind of cumbersome and time-consuming. You have to manually add one, copy one, then change the parameters, etc. So just in that regard, being able to quickly change a whole set of functionality, let's say for 40 buttons, is really done in seconds. Buttons also provide security, both with the key systems where you can use NFC. You can also use PIN codes to access certain parts of the configuration, and that is very usable in, for instance, in a studio or bus, to be able to restrict what functionality each of the operators should have. And if a technical director then sits down on the same workstation, he can just add his pin, and then he have full control over things that the normal position would not be given. Another thing is to also be sure that you have these specially made integrations that can be also code copyrighted, and I know they are also starting to trickling down to the Companion. So in my opinion, Companion is more for do-it-yourself. Even we use it all the time, and we see ourselves as professionals, and you see that all over the place. And I think over time, you will see the more professional, bigger capacity places will start to use Buttons instead.
Guy?
Yeah, well said, Ronnie. He took a lot of the thunder that I was going to say. Keep in mind that it is paid, so you are going to be paying about $9 to get started. And then today I hit my limit for 3 devices, so now I'm having to jump up to $39. So this can get expensive fast when you look at it on an annualized basis. I do have a quick screen share that I'll show you real quick, just to show you some of the differences as far as drag and drop. This is where it gets super powerful. This is just some sample buttons, but up top here I have start and stop an NDI discovery server up on AWS. I'll show you that. And then these are time code for an AJ Key Pro. And you can see how it's different here than Companion, where we've got these pop outs. So if I hit record, that's going to trigger 9. So 9 AJ recorders just started, and now you'll see the time code starting to move, and all that time code's moving on all those machines in the same sync. Down here I have an Atem, and you can see the Atem as I click these buttons. You can see them moving on this Atem here, and then over here I have some vMix buttons, and you can see vMix here as I cut. You can see it working here. Now to build these, the difference is there's a lot of drag and drop. So actually first here's some of the stuff that you won't see in Companion very easy. Like this is a pop-up for the AWS EC2 instance start and stop. Like it's actually logged into my account. I put in the account information, and so like here I could say here's the variable start, stop, or reboot an existing EC2 instance. And when I click this pop-up, you can actually see that there's an NDI bridge in there, there's a Viz Vector, there's a Zoom Room, and I could click any of those and I could make that a start-stop instance. So that's really cool to be able to integrate like that without having to do a bunch of crazy programming. Like this stuff isn't that hard. So there's basically positions, connections, and some of these connections are different than what you're used to seeing in regular Companion. There's just so many more of these connections, and when you click on them, you can see all the actions that device is capable of doing. So like this one, play, record, start, and stop. And then there's also feedbacks, and there's variables like the return, what's coming back, and here you can see the transport state and the clip names and things like that. But here's what's really blown my mind is when you get into one of these areas where you want to add some more buttons for, let's say, let's say the vMix instance. So here I'll type in vMix, and then I'll click on vMix, and you see all these presets. There's different presets for sections. So there's popovers, sections, and buttons. So buttons, you would just drag an individual button. So if you just wanted cut, you could just drag cut. But this is where it really blows my mind, is you could say section, and then down here you could see like just the audio section is all these. So if I wanted bus B, I could grab this whole section and look at all that. We just populated all that. So now I've got a 25% of volume, 50%. I got 0, total, or just mute the whole bus. But all this is now live. So if I hit apply and then I go to well, actually, you're not going to see this one because it'll clip off if I hit apply because of the way that the bottom here is cut off, but basically that just got pushed down below. But anywhere on the network or anywhere in the world, if I open up the ports, this button can be this. I could make this available, or I could put it behind a Cloudflare tunnels system, and now somebody else remotely could be doing all of this for me. So I just give them this simple. I could give them this and give them a multi-view, and they're off and cutting, and they can start and stop the stream, start and stop the record, start and stop the AWS stuff. So it's super powerful. So there's some stuff that comes that's the same, and then there's some stuff that's a lot different, as you can see.
Mickey?
Yeah, the biggest differentiator for me is being able to centrally manage this, and this would be really useful in professional broadcast environment, wherein the EIC and the engineering department will be configuring the button panels that the crew has access to. You don't want, for example, the A1 to be changing what is being shown in the multi-view that the director sees or that the producer sees. So being able to centrally manage and give and assign permissions to each button panel is crucial in a mission critical environment. The other really interesting thing for me is the logic that's built in terms of making assignments on video routers, including NMOS support, which is valuable in an ST2110 environment. Being able to again very quickly assign the routing within video routers, and again with multi-views, which is often what these button panels are used for in broadcast, is without having to do a lot of programming in terms of triggers and variables is really a step up.
Jeff?
Thank you all both. Ann, Ronnie, Guy, Mickey, thanks for all the answers. Follow-up question, I guess probably to Guy, but it could be anybody. So much like Companion on super steroids, this separates the controls from the physical controls. So that you have the software control of things, and then you can attach either interfaces to it, web, iPad, or physical interfaces, stream decks, buttons, all those sorts of things. Is that correct?
That's correct. And one thing that I just read this morning in their Slack channel is that there's going to be a lot more native cloud integration as well. So that's coming to the professional version. So another huge differentiator there is what you're talking about with devices. You have physical devices that if you want security, that's one of the biggest things, as Mickey was saying, like you have these panels in trucks where you don't want somebody to accidentally route something. Like you could have a TD that's in there temporarily, and if they push that button on accident, it could reroute something that triggers something else somewhere downstream. So you could lock them out of that panel and just give them what they need. And as I think it was Ronnie was saying, the NFC chip would allow you to just walk up and physically have access to things based on your key versus somebody else's key versus somebody else's key. So it's pretty exciting to see where this is all going to go. Where we're all having different devices, but we can be on-prem or afar, and it's all controlled.
Mickey?
Yeah, so Companion has a little bit of Companion satellite, but it certainly doesn't have especially the security features of that.
as what's coming. I mean, it's not released yet, but so there is Companion Cloud. But from what I understand, this is going to be part of the paid service. So in some ways, I'm glad that there's money being spent now because it's fueling this development that is needed. And obviously, broadcast is a huge industry. So, and then we're just looking at Stream Decks right now, but Densitron is the high end stuff, and those, it's not just a panel with buttons, it's a panel with buttons and screens and a really nicer tactile feel, but you're getting into big money. So that's where I think that their eyes are really opening up to the broadcast industry, is like, hey, these are tools for professionals. Let's give them access to all these things that they want. So like the Behringer X Touch or Behringer X32 or any of these devices where you have limited presets, I think we're going to see way more. Because before it was like you'd open up the presets in Companion and it'd be like, okay, you get 3. You get like 3 things that the community made for you. But now if somebody says, hey, build this, we're going to pay you $10,000, somebody will build it and make it all check out, make sure it's all professional. And now you have access to everything, all the routing, every single button that you could possibly imagine.
Mickey?
Yeah, I'm curious, like, to Guy or anyone else, like, how valuable is that NFC lockout? Because, like, in professional, I haven't seen a situation wherein panels are locked out in broadcast environments, including like some of the larger productions, like global productions. Where does the NFC security, like, is it really of value?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, if you're on prem, if you're physically there, like, you've already passed security. Like you're in a truck. You have access to the farm.
If you get to the broadcast compound or into the facility, then that's multiple layers of credential checking that you already have to go through.
Yeah, it's tough to say where this is most valuable. It might be a government thing. It might be, the things that we're just not aware of in our industry that they've invented for other industries, because there are parts of this that we're not privy to. Like me firing up EC2 instances and seeing that I could do all that's like a whole nother world, that other people can use BitFocus buttons for, that they would have never been. They're not even in the broadcast side, but they need it to turn on some other thing that turns on something else in the IoT world. But this is the only way to do it. The only way secure and simple. Because that's the part I didn't show, is that I learned how to do that from the help section. So I'm no longer screen sharing, but basically in the top right, there's a little help button. And by clicking on that, it gave me all the instructions on how to set up that security access so I can get in. Because, obviously it needs to be super secure. So I had to create a user access for Companion or for BitFocus to be able to come into my environment. So it's interesting what you can do as far as locking things out.
Next question.
Next question is coming from Harold Williams in Portsmouth. Can someone explain why we need to set our video recorders to 2997 to drop frames in order to keep audio in sync?
Courtney?
Boy, welcome to this can of worms for breakfast. Nothing like a big can of worms for breakfast. This is a long story, and it goes way back to when NTSC was coming up with color television in the United States. We had previously black and white television, which was key to the frequency of our alternating current, which was 60 hertz here in the USA. So that was 30 frames per second. But when they came up with color television, they had to add the color subcarrier in, which took a little bit of time in the broadcast. And to make it compatible with black and white television, they had to slow the frame rate down on color television to 29.97 frames per second instead of 30 frames per second. So as a result, the time code that then they came up with was 2997. Unfortunately, since that runs a little bit faster, that doesn't count in real time. So you have to come up with drop frame, which is a method of dropping frame numbers, but not actual frames. The actual frames are still there every minute on the minute. They drop 2 frames. Except for the 10th minute when they drop no frames. Is this complicated enough for you? So if you don't drop frames, your time code will be off of real time by about 3.6 seconds or 0.1% per hour. So if you don't drop those frames, the timing of your show will, by looking at the time code, will not be accurate. Typically, now it depends on how the workflow is set up. A lot of times you will shoot almost always non-drop frame. when you're in production, and then convert to drop frame on post-production. When it's output to a final deliverable, that's when drop frame timecode is inserted, so that the timecode of the finished program will reflect real time running. So it's not necessarily to keep the timecode in sync, but you have to both be on the same frame rate when you're recording, drop frame or non-drop frame, to keep the audio and the video in sync. So make sure you agree with whatever the camera's doing, and usually it's non-drop frame in production.
Bill?
Courtney nailed it. I have to say that's one of the best explanations. Just please remember, you can't drop frames. You're dropping frame numbers in order to keep the runtime of things consistent with how clocks work. It has nothing to do with dropping frames. People get that confused all the time.
Ronnie?
Yeah, and just to make sure for all the other people that are not living in this 2997 areas, it's easily fixed. You can move to Europe or Asia, and you're get rid of those problems in a small flight of a few hours.
Mickey?
Yeah, Courtney's certainly correct, especially in past workflows. With modern NLEs and modern workflows, there's something wrong happening if you are having to change frame rates just to get things in sync. In terms of audio, audio does not work with does not operate in frame rates. Yes, you can have frame rate as metadata, but the metadata, the frame rate set in the metadata does not affect the length or speed of the audio at all. Apart from earlier on in the life of iMovie Pro, Final Cut Pro 10, earlier on there was a bug that I hope they have fixed by now, wherein if audio had a metadata at a specific frame rate, it would automatically do a pull up or a pull down on the audio, which should never happen. But if you're experiencing this, either whether it's Final Cut Pro 10 or some other NLE with a modern production workflow, there's something wrong going on, and I'm curious what exactly is happening and where it is happening.
You can ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. It's fast and easy. Nothing to sign up for, nothing to log into. Just go to askofficehours.global, put in your name, put in your question. We'll roll it in over the next few days, and we'd appreciate it. Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. Thomanns, the big German giant, has bought my favorite amplifier company, Hughes Kettner. I have their Grand Meister Deluxe 40 amp and a CC212 2x2 cabinet, which are awesome. Thoughts?
Jeff?
H&K makes great amps, and to have a tube amp that's digitally controllable and recallable kind of gets you an amazing combination of worlds. So, Peter, I bet you enjoy playing through that amp. It's probably a lot of fun. Now, Thomanns purchasing them, we're seeing lots of acquiring of companies all the time. Too soon to know whether the intellectual meat behind H&K, the people that actually design and build these things, stays, and if Thomanns keeps that as part of H&K or pulls that intellectual, this could be an acquisition just to get those intelligent designers into other products that Thomanns wants to do. So too soon to know exactly where this is going to lead for H&K.
Mickey?
Yeah, certainly there's a lot of movement with how volatile the global economy is right now. I think it's very wise for Thomann to diversify and not only be a reseller of products, but also have a couple of tools as acquiring a couple of companies that make production tools under their belts. They acquired H&K, and I think it was last year or 2 years ago they acquired Universe, the control application. So I think it's wise for them to diversify the offerings that they have.
Next question.
Next question is coming from Peter G. Gonzalez III in Washington, D.C. How would you explain gain staging and the correct way to do it in a way a child could understand?
Ronnie?
I'm not sure a child would understand my explanation. But generally said, the analog gain staging or the normal gain staging, which is then done on the stage box or on the mixer's plug side of the XLRs coming into the equipment, is the one that is important to have high enough, but not too high. If it's too high, you will blow out the audio and you get some bad audio. Keep that in the digital realm. That is really important. In the old analog days, it was not that important. But in the digital days, you try to have it around minus 12 to minus 18 dB full scale. And then the other digital gain is after it has been converted to digital signal. And what we tend to use digital gain for is when we have two mixers sharing the same stage box, where we set the analog gain to a perfect level. And then we have the monitor mixers is then adjusting that and are probably responsible most of the times. And then we have front of house mixers where we actually do the front of house mixing. And then we use something called digital gain or trim on some consoles. It has a lot of different naming depending on the vendor, but we use that digital trim to just trim our own inputs that is going out on our mixers to the front of house, whereas the monitor guys have their own full control over the main part of the analog conversion input. That is kind of the technical part.
Jeff?
I'm going to show a couple of graphics here just to talk about gain staging. We need to think about where our signal falls. So at the top we clip, so we get the maximum output we can get without distortion, so we can go all the way up to the maximum of our system. And then down at the bottom we potentially have noise floor. We have noise in our system. Going to the next one, this shows generally the three worlds. We have the acoustic world, and I've got kind of sort of where human hearing lies, and that's measured typically in decibels sound pressure level, dB/SPL. In the middle, we have analog. Now, analog's the tough one because analog tends to work around the operating signal level. So in US professional gear, that's +4 dBu. That's 1.228 volts RMS swing. But each piece of analog gear has a different amount of headroom, how much louder than that you can get, and it has a different noise floor. In the digital domain, the actual agreed upon point is the maximum. That's the 0 dBFS, dB's full scale. And so decibels are all the same decibels, but they're just a relationship, a ratio. So the 6 decibels is 6 decibels is 6 decibels. You get 6 decibels louder in acoustic sound. That will be 6 decibels louder in the analog domain after your microphone preamp. Convert that to digital. That will be 6 decibels louder in the digital domain as long as you haven't run into either end, either clipping at the top or fallen into the noise floor at the bottom. Gain staging is about making these all fit together in the best way. I'm trying to search for an article I read the other day which kind of talked about the two kind of methods that engineers typically use, setting up, mainly talking from a live sound PA perspective. There's one camp which aims to set because we're usually dealing with preamps in our stage boxes now. So there's one analog stage, that's the microphone preamp, and then we go right into converting to digital. So we want to set the gain from acoustic into the sensitivity of the microphone into the up to line level before the analog to digital converter. We want to set the gain of that mic preamp optimally to get the signal into the digital domain as close to a good level, never clipping. So we're well away from the noise floor and we don't hit clipping. And many engineers will work to do that, set the optimal gain there. The problem with that is if you have a sound that doesn't need to be very loud in the PA system, you end up pulling the fader down because you have a very optimized signal in the digital domain in the mixer, but you don't want it very loud, so you turn the fader down. And faders on consoles have their optimum resolution around 0 dB. Faders usually have 10 dB of gain above 0 unity gain, and they all go down to minus infinity. But the steps of the actual motion of the fader change, and it's got its highest resolution, meaning a small amount of movement gives you a small amount of dB. When you get down to the bottom of the fader, a small amount of movement could be 10 or 15 dB of change. So now, does it matter as much because you're turning that down? No. Other people will set all their faders at unity and then optimize the preamps to give them a good mix, which may give them a lower level, and so that could increase noise floor. Gain staging is a lot easier once we're in the digital domain because now unity is unity is unity, 0 dBFS is 0 dBFS all the way along. There's no differences between digital devices where there were in analog. Battery-powered analog gear had very little headroom. It might only be 12 dB above signal level as opposed to high-quality analog gear would have 24 dB above signal level. So is this a way a child could understand? Is this gain staging for like I'm 5? No, probably not. Here's the 5 version. The 5, explain like I'm 5. Look at your signal level with someone playing a typical thing. You know, they're playing their instrument, they're singing, they're talking. Set the gain so that you have a little bit of headroom, peaking at minus 12 dB. That will ensure that when they actually get into the actual performance and not the sound check, that when they get excited and they speak louder and they play louder and the drummer hits the drums, you still have some headroom, and that way you're not going to clip your mic preamp. If you clip your mic preamp, that clipping will just get quieter when you turn it down later. You will never get rid of it.
Mickey?
Yeah, like you're 5. Too loud, bad. Too quiet, bad. Just right, good. In terms of gain staging, there are 2 aspects to it from my point of view. You have the gain staging in terms of calibrating your entire sound chain. So whether you have a stage box and that hits a console and then that goes into an A to D converter or whatever your pipeline is, each step in the chain has to be calibrated with each other so that, say, at your mixing console, talking in terms of digital signals here, minus 20 dBFS or minus 18 dBFS, on your console going out also ends up being minus 20 dBFS on the next thing in the chain, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, so that what you're hearing and seeing on your console is what is really going out to wherever your signal is flowing to. That's one side of gain staging. The other side is managing the gain staging of your inputs. As the others were talking about earlier, this is you typically start with a microphone. In situations wherein it is a live broadcast or even like a mixing for a PA system, you may want to have a good amount of headroom there in order for you to be protected against clipping should you encounter a more dynamic sound source or someone suddenly starts to yell into the mic. I like to, in situations like that, I like to have 15 to 20 dB of headroom there. So I would set my head amp so that my peaks would hit minus 15 or minus 20, between minus 15 and minus 20 dBFS on the peaks at the head amp. And then as it goes through my processing pipeline, I start to manage that signal and its gain along with its dynamic range. If I need to push it louder, say in situations wherein, like, for example, broadcasts, especially broadcasts out to the web, which are extremely loud. YouTube, for example, wants minus 14 dBFS. That's what they want to receive. I start to manage that dynamic range. Slowly squish it down, increase the gain, squish it down even more, increase the gain again, and manage that dynamic range so that I hit my delivery spec. If you aim for your delivery spec, especially if it's a loud one right at the head amp, you're gonna clip that head amp. And in situations where it's a narrative production, where we're shooting a narrative film, I know the script. We do several rehearsals, ideally, before we go for an actual take. I would be comfortable, be comfortable enough to have just 10 to 15 dB of headroom in those situations. Of course, like, I pay attention to the talent, and I learn their habits, whether they like to improvise sometimes or not, go louder or quieter compared to the rehearsals. But that's where being an engineer and making judgments comes in. But yeah, you want to manage your gain stage so that you are protected prior to your A to D conversion, and then you slowly get up to hit your delivery specs as you go through your processing chain.
We've got evening shows for you to watch live or later, so check out Extra Hours on Mondays, and then the Rundown, that happens tomorrow, Thursdays, both of those 6 p.m. Pacific. Next question.
Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona, USA. We are getting a yellow tint on our live stream that is not present in the video chain anywhere except in vMix. Chain is FX6 to Atem Mini Extreme ISO, into Mac Mini, into Zoom, into vMix. Color looks great all the way until vMix. Any thoughts?
Alexander?
So when you say it looks fine except into vMix, and you said it's going into Zoom, so I'm guessing it looks fine in Zoom. Now, one thing to remember about the Atem Mini is if you're using the USB webcam feature of that now the Zoom app automatically tries to correct for the how do I say it politely, the issues with the color space and the lack of quality with the USB webcam feature. So I'm not saying that is the sole source of the problem, but just remember that the USB encoding aspect of the Atem is MJPEG compression, unlike some of the other competitor products out there like the Roland and the Aja products, which use YUY2 uncompressed video. You'll notice a huge color quality difference. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I don't use that feature of the Atem anymore. I go HDMI out into a Roland capture card, and the color quality, overall sharpness and color quality is way better. In vMix, and I'm sure other people will have a better answer, but double check to make sure that you're using the right color space. Make sure that it's not using some kind of reduced color space and that it's giving you the full color space that you need, which is Rec 709. There may be some settings somewhere in there because it's obviously you're seeing it only in vMix, so it is somewhere in vMix.
Courtney?
Yeah, since you're using vMix, it means you're using Windows, and something Windows added around Windows 10 is something called Nightlight. So this, they determined that, looking at a screen with a high blue content keeps you up at late at night. So there's this thing in your settings called Nightlight. Here it is right here. And if you turn it on, it doesn't seem to affect it because I have mine turned all the way off. And what it does is it reduces the blue content of your output. Now I'll crank up the strength, and you'll see everything turns kind of a mushy yellow there. Depending upon the strength of this setting, it will drop the blue content down of your video, anything going through this video card. So make sure that setting is just set the strength to 0. And this is set to come on typically at night. A lot of times you'll set it and it will, after a certain period of time in the evening, it will switch to that mode. And so if that setting happens to be turned on, you may find it turning your image yellow at a certain point in time.
Mickey?
And certainly verify where exactly in the pipeline you're seeing this. Like on the Mac Mini that's doing the transmission over Zoom, if you pin your own video that you're transmitting within Zoom on that Mac Mini, do you see the yellow tint? I would also be curious if you bring another computer into that same meeting and seeing the transmission on the other end of Zoom, do you see the tint as well? That would narrow down where exactly it's happening. Is it happening at the output of the UVC output of the Atem? Is it happening because of the compression and whatever else Zoom is doing? Bear in mind, Zoom is transmitting a highly compressed video feed. At 1080, it would be just around 5 or 6 megabits per second. So that's a highly compressed feed that's going through there. It should not affect the color that's being received there, but it's something to look into. If it's certainly not there, and you're only seeing it in the vMix integration, the Zoom integration within vMix, then you know where to focus your attention to. But narrow that down and see if another machine brought into the same meeting is seeing that as well.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida, USA. Large conference room, 250 in theater seating with wood floors, beam ceiling, and window walls. Suggestions to improve audio intelligibility in this space.
Marty?
Well, if intelligibility is a problem, then you have an acoustics issue, and you have apparently have a lot of reflective surfaces that are sending sound, reflecting off of walls, and combining with the direct sound from the loudspeakers in a way that causes comb filtering, phase cancellations, and that reduces speech intelligibility. And also the time difference between the direct sound and the reflected sound means you have a time smear when the sound is arriving at any particular seat. This all serves to diminish intelligibility, which is in consonants and transients, which are all pretty much very dependent on time of arrival and clarity. So the two ways of dealing with this kind of issue is to improve the acoustical performance of the room by treating it with either absorption materials or diffusion materials. That can get pretty expensive in a large room, but is the best way to improve intelligibility. The other thing that you could do is to pay very close attention to the type of loudspeaker you're using, where the loudspeakers are located, how they're aimed. Make sure that they are not pointed at walls or ceilings or floors. They should be, you want to look at the specifications for the dispersion pattern of the speaker, which is what kind of coverage, what is the shape of coverage primarily of the horn in a speaker that has a compression driver. And you want to make sure that that is aimed squarely at the audience where people are sitting and not over their heads and up in the air, and where it's going to be free to bounce off of ceilings and walls and such like that. One of the types of loudspeakers that I mentioned earlier is called flat panel speakers, and these are a very unique product that generates sound waves in a fundamentally different way than other loudspeakers do. And they do not reflect off of the ceilings and walls and other boundaries in the same way, and it really maintains speech intelligibility throughout the entire room. So that's another option you can look at.
Courtney?
Yeah, what Marty was saying is right. Time-aligned speakers, you might look into a speaker array that is time-aligned, so they're adjusted, the angle of the speakers and the distance from the listener are aligned to assure that the sound from each speaker where it's aimed is arriving at the same time as the sound from other speakers that are hitting the same point. If it's, you say it seats about 250, if it's tiered seating, like a stadium-type seating, that's it could make a difference as to whether the chairs are upholstered or not, or whether there are people sitting in them. Can definitely affect the intelligibility of the sound in the room, standing waves. You might also sound treat the back wall. If you can't sound treat, put baffles in. Sometimes they will put battens in on the side walls at angles to reduce the reflection between the two sides of the theater. And the same thing can be done if it has a beam ceiling. And you didn't say whether the ceiling is gabled or not, or if it's a flat ceiling. If it's a gabled ceiling, then you'll have less of a reflection problem than if it's a flat ceiling and a flat floor that are perpendicular or parallel to each other. In that case, a lot of times they will hang battens that are hung vertically in the ceiling to break up the sound waves as they bounce off off the flat surface of the ceiling. And you can put carpet in on the floor to absorb reflections off the floor. Or just hire a whole bunch of people off the street to sit in the seats, and that'll improve your tilt.
Mickey?
Yeah, it depends on how much investment they want to put into treating the space, improving upon it, and also how much work they're willing to do. If they really want to fix things, then they would most likely want to remove or replace or cover up those glass windows to get rid of the reflections from them. If they're willing to do that, they might want to invest in fully treated walls, wherein you have absorption right in the walls, and you have fabric walls that cover up most of the space there. They also have in this image. There's also the baffles that are hanging from the ceiling that Courtney spoke about earlier. Another option in terms of aesthetics is to have these bamboo slats that act as diffusion, and behind the bamboo slats you have those the absorption material there, so that you have you can still keep a bit of liveliness in it. If they do have musical acts that come into the space, if necessary, but still reduce the amount of delay and echo that's happening, and also give a different type of aesthetic if that's what they're going for. If they are just looking to do a quick and dirty solution, they can absolutely put panels around the room to help with that. If you look at this image here, there are very, very large acoustic panels here with absorption material that's added after the fact, along with some fairly light baffles that are hung from the ceiling. Same with an image like this, some absorption that's hung on the walls. This image certainly feels like it was done after the fact, after the space was built, and they added some absorption on the walls there to help sheet the acoustics afterwards. And same with a hall like this, adding a whole bunch of panels at the rear wall where your PA is reflecting, doing a lot. The sound from the PA is reflecting on that large bare wall there would have caused a lot of the echo, and treating that large bare space would certainly help. And as you can see here, they sort of made it a little artistic and a little more aesthetically pleasing by changing up the sizes of the panels and the colors as well.
Jeff?
I think we've all going to say acoustic treatment. So the one thing I don't think has been mentioned, I picture this beam ceiling with space above it as Courtney described, that probably banners hanging, absorptive banners, basically curtains that hang not on the wall, but in the middle, hanging on the ceiling above, will do a lot to absorb sound.
If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a couple ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to the channel. You can volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer. Lots of opportunity there. And finally, there's officehours.global/donate. That's where you can contribute financially to helping run the show. If you just head over to officehours.global/donate, we really appreciate all the support. Thank you to the producers for asking such great questions today. You keep us going every day with the questions, and we can't do the show without you. We had a ton of questions today. We had to send some back. So if we didn't get to your question and you asked via Makana, it'll be in your notes and you can submit it again whenever you want. If it was a QR code question, we'll work that into the show the next time it's appropriate. To the panel for being here today, privileged to spend an hour getting smarter with you. Thank you for bringing so much life experience to the panel. You never know what you're going to learn here. And thank you to the back-end crew working not only during the show, but also, as I mentioned before, around the show, keeping us organized, keeping us moving forward, making us look and sound good. We are truly spoiled. I don't know how many bananas we traveled today, but I know it was a lot because we've got people from all over the world just on the panel. I'm going to just throw a guess out there. I'm going to say 40,000 miles. That's 65,000 kilometers, 214 million bananas for scale. All right, we'll see you in after hours.
I changed my acoustics. Did it make any difference?
Hello?
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 Are you in a tunnel somewhere?
Sounds like you're
Thanks,
calling
everybody.
into a radio show.
Turn down your speakers. I said, sir, can you turn down the radio, please? Thanks, everybody. See you Friday.
Nice to see you all.
What about Thursday?
Yeah, I'll be here tomorrow.
All right.
Adios,
See you all.
amigos.
Bye-bye.